Welcome to the Backyard Professor Esoteric Studies. I am going to go into a deep dive tonight in Shakespeare's most mystical mystery play that he wrote. Now, Isaac Asimov, in his Guide to Shakespeare, says this is utter fantasy. I honestly think he missed the whole point of what Shakespeare was doing, as do so many of us the first or second time through. In studying the ancient mysteries, which is my favorite subject of all, this subject right now that I'm sharing with you, the esoteric, you learn to see the patterns of what the ancients meant by the mysteries. You begin to see the relevance of those ancient mysteries. Some of these things go back 4,000 years, and yet they are exactly relevant for us right now today. And I will explain that tonight as well. I will share with you how the relevance comes out. But Shakespeare's mystery play, A Midnight Summer's Dream, on the surface is beautifully crafted to be just pure fantasy. And that is, I believe, how he meant it to be. He's hiding the truth in plain sight. And so I want to dive into Shakespeare. I want to share with you the subtleties of the mystery play involved. I will do a comparison cross-check with other literatures. I will share some of the symbolism, which is stunningly understood through the literature, and how Shakespeare utilizes that in his absolutely masterful, genius way. So let's get started. I'm not going to have any slides or music in this one. I'm simply going to read I have been typing it up, and I've typed it up into a lecture type format. I will read this to you tonight. Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream and the Ancient Fourfold Mysteries, Dreaming the Ladder of Light. The dream as a rite of the soul. Beneath its laughter and moonlit mischief, A Midsummer Night's Dream is Shakespeare's most explicit mystery play. On the surface, we see runaway lovers, quarreling fairies, a troupe of bumbling actors. Beneath that comedy unfolds an initiatory drama that mirrors the ancient pattern of descent, transformation, and return. Shakespeare's surface sparkles fairies and magic potions, lovers in a moonlit wood. This conceals a dense web of initiatory, alchemical, and Platonic, as well as biblical imagery. So let's unpack this step by step. 3 interwoven worlds structure this play. Athens, which represents the law, daylight, reason, the waking world. And the faculty, of course, is the intellect of man and woman. The forest is the dream, the desire angle, the psyche's wilderness. And this deals with imagination. And the fairy realm is the invisible divine world of energies, and this would represent the spirit. So the lover's flight into the woods is a catabasis. What a catabasis is a descent into the imaginal world where order dissolves, and that's exactly what we read. There they meet Oberon and Titania, solar and lunar poles of creation, whose reconciliation at dawn heals the disorder of nature itself. The play ends in morning light, the psyche integrated, cosmos restored. Entering the forest is what makes this an initiation. The ego, which is represented by Athens, descends into the subconscious, which the forest represents, and it undergoes confusion and transformation. And then it returns integrated. This mirrors the ancient Eleusinian mysteries, the hero's night journey, the alchemical nigredo to albedo to rubedo cycle. Now we look at the imagination as Jacob's ladder. The faculty mediating all of this is the imagination. What Renaissance Hermeticists call the imaginatio vera, the true imagination. It is not fantasy's idle play, but they view it more as a perceptive organ, bridging body and spirit. In biblical symbolism, this is Jacob's ladder, the rungs by which angels, and we can visualize these as the forms of thought and image for the symbolism on Jacob's ladder. And Jacob sees them ascend and descend between the heaven and the earth. So the body perceives through sense, our intellect perceives through abstraction, and our imagination perceives through living images that unite both of the body and the intellect. A vision, a dream, or a work of art is thus the threshold experience. And this is where spirit enters matter, and matter becomes radiant with spirit. To awaken imagination, then, is to awaken vision itself. So what is this Midsummer Night's Dream really doing? Philosophically, it's dramatizing the Platonic ladder of love and ascent from sense to spirit. Psychologically, and this anticipated Carl Jung, actually, this is the reconciliation of the masculine feminine, the conscious unconscious. Now, magically, it's restaging an initiation rite in theatrical form. That's why Shakespeare's plays were so popular and famous. What this echoes is the Mistai who witnessed light after darkness. And even artistically, we could note that this is declaring the imagination as something sacred. The poet's dream is a form of divine creation. So a midsummer night. This is the solstice. This is the summer solstice, the solstitial gate. The title signals the mystery's cosmic timing. Midsummer night is the summer solstice. This is the sun's zenith as well as the turning point. The ancient festival when the veil between the worlds thins. Ananda K. Kumaraswamy has mentioned this many times in his writings. Throughout the world's traditions, both the solstices and the equinoxes form the four quarters of the earth, the arms of the cosmic cross. East is the spring equinox. It represents air and resurrection. South is the summer solstice. It represents fire and illumination. West is the autumn equinox. It represents water and descent. And north is the winter equinox. It represents earth and rebirth. Now, this reminds us of Egypt's four sons of Horus. There's parallels to these four directions in Mesopotamia's four genii of the winds, the Hopi four sacred colors, their migrations in four directions over their land. The alchemical four elements, it also reminds us of the Christian four evangelists. This quadrature is echoed throughout history and religion. Midsummer night occupies the southern fiery gate, the moment when light at full power begins its inward return. Shakespeare's plot, what it's doing here is it's talking about the turning of the cosmic wheel. That's part of the point of this whole play. It is about the disorder of the seasons. We see the confusion of love, and we see the final realignment at dawn. And this is an echo of the alchemical conjunctio oppositorum, the sacred marriage of opposites. A midsummer night's dream looks like a harmless midsummer mischief, but beneath the laughter lies an esoteric allegory of transformation. The forest is the alchemist's vessel. love is the catalyst, the fairy monarchs are the cosmic opposites, and dawn is enlightenment. Like Rabelais' Gargantua and Pantagruel, it is a carnival mask for a mystery play. It's the rebirth of soul and cosmos through the creative imagination. The parallels with Alice in Wonderland are equally instructive for us, as I will show. First, we get to the descent into the other world. Hermia and Lysander enter the forest. In Alice in Wonderland, she falls down the rabbit hole. Both leave the daylight of rational order for the fluid realm of dream and imagination and the unconscious. This is the katabasis, the initiatory descent found in Eleusis, Orphic myth, and alchemical retorts. Now, I want to explain more about the forest in myth. This is an incredibly powerful image here. This is why I suspect this is a mystery play. This is one of the big parts. And this occurred even before psychology. Myth and story, they were already using the forest as a place of initiation and transformation, and we find this in multiple different literatures and experiences. In Greek myths, heroes enter the wild. You have Perseus, Heracles, Orpheus himself. You even have, what's his name? Dionysius. You even have Dionysus. And when they emerge, they're changed. The wild is where the civilizing ego meets primal life. In the biblical and desert traditions, the wilderness is where prophets confront God and the self-stripped bear, Moses. You have Elijah. You have Jesus. All entered the wilderness. The wilderness or the forest is always the outside that is really inside, the unknown realm. And this is where we all face chaos and we find revelation. Medieval romance kept this pattern alive. Cretan de Troyes and the Arthurian poets placed knight's quest in the forest perilous. There the knight meets his shadow, the monster, the temptation. This is where the Grail test occurs. The forest becomes the psychic landscape of the soul's trial. So long before Freud or Jung, storytellers understood that the forest is the mirror of the inner world that we fear and we need to explore. When depth psychology came about, Freud, Jung, and Campbell, Freud didn't use forest symbolically as often, but he set the groundwork in dreams, slips, and fantasies where he noted these reveal an unconscious realm of repressed desire and fear. And later interpreters found in his notion of the unconscious the exact same topography as the mythic forest. It was dark, tangled, it was instinctive, and it was full of hidden figures. Carl Jung is the one who explicitly linked the forest to the unconscious. In his essays and letters, he used the forest, the cave, the sea, and even the night. And he said these were archetypal images of the collective unconscious. That deeper psychic layer that is shared by all of us. So he writes in the Symbols of Transformation in 1912, when we enter the forest, we enter the dark realm of the psyche where consciousness has not yet penetrated. And then in the Archetypes in the Collective Unconscious in 1959, he describes dreams of woods and wilderness as symbols of the material unconscious, fertile, dangerous, transformative. So for Jung, the forest is not evil, it is potential. It's the living instinctual matrix of the psyche. This is where the ego must encounter to become whole individuation. Joseph Campbell popularized this for all the rest of the modern audience. In The Hero with a Thousand Faces, 1949, he describes the hero's journey as the move from the known to the unknown, often into the forest or the cave. He even brought in the belly of the whale, and that gives us the image of Jonah in the belly of the whale, right? And this is where transformation occurs. He quotes an old proverb: if you want to find the path, you must enter the forest at the darkest point where there is no path. That is the unconscious in mythic geography. Now, why does this work as a symbol, and why was it so effective in this play of Shakespeare? It is the perfect natural metaphor for the unconscious because it's dense, shadowed, it's uncharted, it's full of strange life and sound, it's dangerous yet fertile, it requires courage to enter, and it provides wood, that is, transformation's material. A clearing in the forest equals a moment of awareness. Losing one's way is disorientation in your psyche. Emerging from a forest symbolizes enlightenment, individuation, rebirth, etc. That's why A Midsummer Night's Dream, Dante's Dark Wood, Snow White, we can look at the Fairy Queen and the Lord of the Rings. They all send their heroes through forests. It's the same journey inward. Further on Dante's Dark Wood, I thought this was extremely interesting as I researched this out. Selva Oscura. This is the opening symbol of his Divine Comedy. And it's one of the most famous metaphors for the soul lost in the unconscious in all of Western literature. Here's the passage that begins the entire work from the Inferno, Canto 1. Midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within a dark wood, for the straight way had been lost. The dark wood. Right from the beginning, Dante situates his epic as a spiritual and a psychological crisis. What we would call today a midlife awakening, or the dark night of the soul. The dark wood represents confusion, sin, fear, spiritual blindness. But it has to be dark because it's also the beginning of transformation. It goes from dark to light. He's lost the straight path. See, the clarity, the virtue, the consciousness, he's lost that. The forest also blocks the sun of the light of the sun. This is the symbol of divine illumination. You can't get that in a real heavy, thick, dense forest. The beasts that chase him there, the leopard, the lion, the she-wolf, they embody his instincts and vices. To escape, Dante must descend through hell. He must pass through purgatory and then ascend to paradise. It's a literal katabasis. An anabasis is a sequence, descent and ascent. It's an initiatory journey in every sense of the word. In the Jungian psychological reading, James Hillman, Carl Jung, Joseph Campbell, they all cite Dante's Dark Wood as the archetype of entering the unconscious. They got it. They caught it, see? This is the psyche's wilderness. This is the region where the ego loses its bearings. This is the journey through hell. This is the confrontation with the shadow, as Jung noted. This is the repressed contents of ourself. Purgatory is the process of purification and integration. Paradise is illumination, the unified consciousness that perceives the divine. It's all right there in the Divine Comedy. It's not just a theological map of the afterlife. It is an inner map of the human soul, is what we're discovering. Virgil is the guide. He would represent the rational mind, the ancestral wisdom leading the soul. The descent through hell is the confrontation with the shadow material. The ascent through purgatory is the purification, and that ascent balances the opposites, and then your vision in paradise. That's where you integrate the psyche with the divine intellect. Why does this matter? Because the Dark Wood is a literary twin of Shakespeare's Enchanted Forest. It's the literary twin of Alice's rabbit hole in Alice in Wonderland, and the mythic underworlds of Orpheus and Inanna. So it's the archetypal entrance into the mystery, the moment when the conscious self must surrender and let imagination and divine guidance take over. When Dante begins, he stands exactly where Shakespeare's lovers stand when they enter the forest, lost to the daylight of reason, but on the threshold of revelation. The dark wood is the soul's forest, our own inner world awaiting illumination. That's why we suspect this is a mystery play. So when we go into the forest, we step away from social conditioning. We meet ourselves as nature made us, instinctive, emotive, creative. That's where renewal begins. So in our modern spiritual language, to enter the forest is to face what we've ignored or repressed. We let imagination guide us through the shadows. Return with a deeper self-knowledge and compassion. That's the mystery journey in psychological form. And we all get to go through it if we haven't yet. That's the point of becoming an adult. So the forest is the landscape of the soul, in a line. Jung named it, Campbell mapped it, and the poets and mystics have been talking about it for millennia. So it's in the forest where reason dissolves. You can't reason your way out of the forest. This is where the lovers switch partners in Shakespeare's play. Bottom gains an ass's head, time and space warp. And in Alice in Wonderland, logic bends, size shifts, and words mutate. Both worlds obey imaginative law, not physical law. The prima materia of the alchemists, this is where all forms intermingle. So there's the alchemical tie-in. Oberon and Titania. Well, they rule the subtle world as masculine, feminine cosmic forces. And remember in Alice in Wonderland, the Queen of Hearts and the White King, Queen, in the looking glass, they echo this same polarity, but now in the intellect's chessboard rather than nature's forest. You see how Lewis Carroll has changed this up a little bit. Each work stages the reconciliation of opposites, however. Spirit and matter, law and desire, heart and head. The dream is initiation at dawn in Shakespeare. That's when the dream ends and harmony is brought back. Alice awakes by the riverbank, you remember, and she's transformed in consciousness. Both of these are rites of passage. It's a movement from ignorance through chaos to an awakened vision of who you are. The dream, well, that's the veil between the worlds. When that's lifted, the initiate sees that both realms are actually just one. So, the hidden philosophies, Platonism in A Midsummer Night's Dream, the ascent from sensual love to divine harmony, that's Platonism. In Alice in Wonderland, we have the exploration of illusion versus reality. Appearances appear as shadows of thought. You know, if we look at the Hermetic alchemy idea, in A Midsummer Night's Dream, we have the union of the sun, Oberon represents that, and the moon, and that's Titania. The forest as the alchemical vessel. In Alice in Wonderland, the transformation is through paradox. You drink me and you eat me. That is the alchemical solve et coagula. So we see these same types of ancient mysteries in both Shakespeare and in Lewis Carroll, Alice in Wonderland. With the mystery ritual in Midsummer Night's Dream, the lovers sleep and then after they awake, that's their initiation. And in Alice in Wonderland, Alice's dream leads to the rebirth of self-awareness. In the Gnostic imagination, Puck's dream world is the mind world in A Midsummer Night's Dream, whereas in Alice in Wonderland, it's a mental cosmos created by logos play, by word play. So that is interesting. So Shakespeare and Carroll both act as our initiators as we read their materials. Their nonsense is sacred camouflage. That is, teaching that imagination is itself a mystical faculty within us and the ladder between body and spirit. Where Shakespeare couches this in Elizabethan Hermeticism, Lewis Carroll restates it in Victorian logic and mathematics. Reason's own dream of transcendence is what we see in both. So, yeah, Alice in Wonderland is the modern echo of A Midsummer Night's Dream in these regards. Absolutely. Both of these stage the marriage of opposites within the human psyche, and they invite the reader to awaken from the dream, not by escaping it, but by recognizing that the dream is reality seen from the inside. That's why this is initiatory. Now, as the play closes, here's what Shakespeare said. Now the hungry lion roars, and the wolf behowls the moon. This image is not casual. This is a very interesting idea here. The lion has been the solar guardian since prehistory. This gets fascinating. In Egypt, the twin lions, Aker, guard the eastern and western horizons. He's opening the earth so that the sun god Re, who is Horus at dawn, may pass. In the Mithraic temples, the Leo grade signified fiery purification. In Buddhist and Christian architecture, the lions guard the law gates and the thrones of judgment. The lions roar at sunrise. This is the voice of consciousness reborn. This is the triumph of order over the night's chaos. This same principle explains why lions flank the entrance of temples and courthouses even today. They mark the passage from profane space into sacred or lawful order. So we're talking about what? Solar and royal power. From the earliest civilizations, the lion has always belonged to the sun. In Mesopotamia, the lion was the beast of Shamash, the solar judge, and of Ishtar in Nana, whose lions drew her chariot. In Egypt, Sekhmet, known as the powerful one, it was a lioness goddess of the noonday sun. She was the destroyer and the healer. Mox was her male partner, a solar warrior. The biblical Lion of Judah theme comes up, and the winged lion of St. Mark continue this same solar regal theme in the scripture. So a lion stands for the radiant strength of consciousness. Mark continued with the fiery logos that dispels chaos. Sorry, I meant John continues with the fiery logos that dispels chaos. It's the guardian of the threshold. That's why the lion was there in Shakespeare. Shakespeare understood this because he was tapping in to ancient materials, bringing it in and hiding it under a sheer fantasy. Well, that power has to be tamed before we're enlightened. And lions appear as guardian pairs at gates or thrones or temples. The Lamassu of Assyria, the lion-bodied, eagle-winged, human-faced, they stood at the palace portals to repel demonic disorder. The lions of Mycenae, 1250 BCE, flanked the central pillar, civilization guarded by solar might. Buddhist and Hindu lion dogs, the Shishi Singha, they guard stupas and law halls. They roar to awaken sleepers. Medieval churches and modern courtyards. inherited the motive. Lions at the entrance mark the passage from the profane to the realm of law and spirit. The guardian lion's gaze, well, that tests the visitor's inner integrity. Only the courageous heart may enter that building past the lion guardians. So in the Mithraic mysteries, initiates advanced through the planetary grades. The Leo grade was the stage of fire and purification. It was ruled by the sun. It was associated with courage and mastery of passion. And the Gnostic lion-faced god Yaldabaoth inverts this. The untamed demiurgic fire must be recognized and transcended. In alchemy, this becomes the green lion that devours the sun. This is the primal force that, once refined, yields gold. Lions also guard the solar portal of rebirth. So in Shakespeare's line in Midsummer Night's Dream, when it ends, now the hungry lion roars and the wolf behowls the moon, it isn't random nocturnal color. The lion roaring at dawn signals that the solar power has awakened. The initiation was a success. The new day, the restored order of light over confusion, it echoes the Horus lion roaring as he rises from the underworld each morning. This is phenomenal tie-in. Across cultures, the lion marks the moment when raw instinct becomes courage, clarity, and righteous authority. He guards both the outer temple and the inner heart. To face the lion is to face our fiery self, that once we master that, becomes one's divine strength. That's why lions crouch before courthouses, thrones, and libraries still. They announce that what lies within is law illuminated by the Sun of Truth. The lion symbolism through the ages we can trace from the Egyptian to the Mithraic, through to the Gnostics, up into the Christians and Renaissance, showing how each one keeps the same threshold and solar meaning. This is living mythology. This is living mythological symbolism right with us. So this is fascinating. The lion's fiery mane and the golden body made it the natural emblem of solar heat. This is the power that dispenses night's chaos, courage and kingship, the virtues that mirror the sun's strength, its guardianhood, the lions of Aker, Mahes, or Sekhmet defending cosmic order. So Egyptians could speak of the roar of the lion in the east as the sound of the sun breaking forth. A line later echoed in magical papyri and hermetic hymns where the lion of light heralds illumination. The solar child Horus, Re, the sun, emerging between the twin lions of Aker at dawn. Well, that's the image that resonated beneath the midsummer night line's symbolic roar of rebirth, the sun triumphant over night. So the continuation of fairies in both Shakespeare, Carroll, and now we can bring in Tolkien as well. What Shakespeare dramatized, Lewis Carroll allegorized, but J.R.R. Tolkien theologized. All three describe entry into the same imaginal middle world, Middle Earth. That ring a bell? Called by Tolkien fairy, F-A-E umlaut R-I-E. By Carroll, he called it Wonderland, and by Hermeticists, the Mundus Imaginalis. So in A Midsummer Night's Dream, the portal is the forest at solstice night. In Alice in Wonderland, it's the rabbit hole and the mirror. And on fairy stories of Middle Earth in Tolkien, it is the story itself that is the perilous realm. The function, in Midsummer Night Dream is through love and dream. In Alice in Wonderland, it's through paradox and logic. In Tolkien, it's recovery, escape, and consolation. So the archetype in the Midsummer Night's Dream is Titania, who is solar lunar. In Alice in Wonderland, it's the White Queen and Queen of Hearts. And on fairy stories in Tolkien, it is the elves, the luminous intermediaries. The goal in Midsummer Night Dream is the integration and the return at dawn. The goal in Alice in Wonderland is awakening to expanded reality. And the goal in J.R.R. Tolkien is the renewal of vision, seeing clearly again. For Tolkien, fairy was real. What it is it's a genuine order of being, accessible through imagination, purified of disbelief. His three gifts of recovery, escape, and consolation are spiritual operations identical to Shakespeare's descent, transformation, and return. So imagination as the ladder of being. In esoteric philosophy, and I mean, we can go from Plato's Symposium to the Kabbalistic Tree of Life here. Imagination, the true imagination, is not make-believe. It is a faculty of perception, and it exists midway between sense and intellect. So the body perceives through the senses, the intellect perceives through concepts, but the imagination perceives through images. And these are living symbols that bridge the visible and the invisible. So Jacob's ladder is the perfect metaphor here. The earth below is body, matter, and incarnation. The heaven above is spirit and divine intelligence. And the ladder itself is the imagination, the medium by which ascent and descent occur. The complex of these symbolisms and how they perfectly integrate is remarkable. In fact, the angels themselves, as Jacob noted, they were ascending and descending this ladder. Those are the movements of insight. They are forms rising from sense to idea and descending again as revelation. So, yes, vision is imagination when it's illuminated. When the image becomes the organ of gnosis rather than fancy. The mystics call this the eye of the heart, or the organ of subtle seeing. Dreaming is imagination without control then. Fantasy is imagination in play. And vision is imagination aligned with the divine intellect, theophany through image. That's why prophets, poets, playwrights all, quote, see, unquote, their truths through image and metaphor. Enoch's wheels of fire, Ezekiel's throne, Shakespeare's moonlit forest, Carroll's rabbit hole. You're starting to get the sense of this? They're not escapes from reality. They are entrances into the imaginal reality, as Henry Corbin named it, the mundus imaginalis. Two worlds, one reality is what we're talking about. Both the physical and the imaginal are aspects of reality, not its totality. The ancient Hermeticists spoke of three levels, actually. Corporeal, which was physical, psychic or imaginal, which was subtle, and noetic, which was intellectual or spiritual. So true initiation means realizing the permeability between these three aspects. That's why Shakespeare's dreamers and Carroll's Alice's experience, That's why the discovery that mind and matter actually do interpenetrate, and that to wake up isn't to leave the dream, but it's to understand its sacred texture. The drama is the ritual enacted, the story turned into sacred movement. That's why Midsummer Night's Dream is not just to be read, but performed. What it's doing, not only for the players on the stage, but for the audience watching it enacts transformation through image and rhythm and laughter and paradox. And we see very good comparisons here with Scripture. This encodes mythic truth in sacred narrative. We see it in pure story, where it gives those truths flesh and feeling. We see it in drama, which externalizes the internal alchemy so that even audiences participate unconsciously in the rite. The play becomes a temple. The stage is an altar, and the imagination is the officiating priest. That's one way we could look at this. So you're seeing the pattern of the mysteries here is what I'm trying to tell you. Our intuition is precisely the initiatory key here. Vision is imagination illumined. Imagination is the ladder that unites the worlds. Art is the rite that reveals their unity. Here's how the alchemists would have put it. As above, so below. As within, so without. That is Hermes Trismegistus Emerald Tablet. So that's the mystery Shakespeare hides behind laughter and Carroll hides beneath nonsense. There's real truth in the world's literature that is not just utter fantasy and nonsense at all. That's what makes it so much fun. Now, the fourfold pattern is just truly everywhere. Egypt, the four sons of Horus, like I told you, around the canopic chest. Babylonia, the four winds of Anu, each with its guardian spirit. In India, you have the four Vedas, the four faces of Brahma, the four yugas. In Hopi and Navajo, you have the four directions, you have the four colors, you have the four clans, and you have the four world arrows. In Christianity, you have the cosmic cross and its four evangelists. So the pattern teaches balance. When any pole dominates, chaos is going to follow. Oberon and Titania's quarrel, and that causes the seasons to alter. That is the mythic dramatization of that imbalance, and it's healed when the solar and lunar principles reconcile. Ezekiel's four living creatures are the archetypal fourfold gatekeepers of the cosmos. Exactly the structure we've been tracing from Egypt through the Hopi is also in the Bible. And it's in John's revelation in the New Testament, the four quarters of the New Jerusalem. So Ezekiel describes the living creatures, the Hayot. I can't do the guttural tonight, sorry. Hayot, each having four faces, lion, ox, man, and eagle. And four wings. They move in perfect harmony around the divine chariot, the Merkava, and they represent fire in the south, courage, kingship, solar radiance. That's the lion. The ox is the earth and north, strength, fertility, and foundation. The man, the angel, is the air. His direction is east, intelligence and consciousness. And then you have the eagle, which represents water and the west. This is vision, transcendence, spirit. So these are the living forces of creation, is what the symbol is pointing to. And they also uphold the throne of God, the chariot wheels turning within wheels of Ezekiel. In Kabbalistic symbolism, they are the four cherubim at the corners of the divine chariot itself, and these are representing the harmonized totality of the elements and the directions. So it all kind of unifies, coagulates, congeals, and comes together in a remarkable mash of symbols and images that is just literally worldwide. And then it was transmitted into later mystical systems. The Christian tradition, each creature became associated with an evangelist. Matthew, man; Mark was the lion; Luke was the ox; John was the eagle. This preserved the cosmic quadrature in the New Testament iconography of the tetramorph. And we still have this same structure in the scripture right now. In the Kabbalah, the Hayot correspond to the 4 letters of the tetragrammaton. Yod He Vav He. Each letter is a world. Each letter is an element. It's a direction. In alchemy, the same 4 become sulfur, the lion, fire; salt, the bull, and earth; Mercury, the eagle, water and air; and the alchemist, man, who unites them. Tarot, the world and universe card of the major arcana, card 21, and the Wheel of Fortune, card 10, show the 4 creatures at the corners, each reading from a book. Well, these represent the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac: Leo, Taurus, Aquarius, and Scorpio, and the stability of creation's axis. So this is the visual link straight into Renaissance magic and the emblem books Shakespeare's peers loved. It's the cosmic foundation because Ezekiel's creatures formed the cube. And I've talked about this in previous videos. This is the cube around the divine chariot. The divine chariot becomes the cube. The cube becomes the divine chariot. 6 faces oriented toward the 4 cardinal directions, plus zenith and nadir. The Merkava is a rotating temple, a mobile cosmos, right? So that's the geometric structure echoed in the Egyptian 4 sons of Horus, the 4 winds in Mesopotamia, the 4 portals of the sun in 1 Enoch, and the 4 sacred mountains or arrows of Native American cosmology. Ezekiel's vision is the Hebrew version of that same world cross, the Merkava, as the wheel of the world's soul. All of it comes together. It's the same thing. This is fascinating because we get it again when it comes back to life in the Renaissance. By Shakespeare's time, these images were well known through art, astrology, and magic. Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy in book 2 explains the 4 creatures as the fixed zodiacal signs and the elemental powers ruling the quarters of heaven. Emblem books and cathedral sculpture placed the tetramorph around thrones and portals, even clocks, visualizing cosmic order. The tarot system likely emerged from that same Renaissance symbolic alphabet, binding Ezekiel's vision to Hermetic cosmology. So it's not far-fetched at all that the playwright's world saw the 4 as the foundation of divine and natural harmony. That's why it's in Shakespeare. This is the biblical echo of the same 4-fold pattern, the very architecture of creation, that Shakespeare restores harmony at the solstice. He's rotating that ancient chariot once more. He's aligning the elements so that the divine can shine through the human. His comedy becomes the chariot vision rendered as dream. That's a nifty way to read this play. Once you get the symbolism, once you understand the patterns, you can see it all over. It's fantastic. Renaissance audiences understood theater as a microcosm of the universe. The stage itself was a circle within a square. It was a cosmic mandala. The actor was a priest of transformation. In Midsummer Night, Shakespeare performs a ritual where the spectators participate unconsciously. Chaos is released through laughter and inversion. right? The forces are reconciled through love's alchemy, and order is renewed through daylight understanding. The play functions exactly as the ancient mysteries did, to reharmonize soul and cosmos through symbol and performance. That's the point. The golden thread across all of this, Shakespeare, Carroll, Tolkien, is the imagination. And this is the mystical faculty that joins worlds. This is what they're showing us. Through the imagination, we ascend Jacob's ladder ourselves. We traverse fairy, the state of being, and we awaken from the dream only to realize that the dream is reality viewed from within. The solstice, the four directions, the roaring lions, the forest itself, the rabbit hole, the elvish light, all are facets of one teaching. The cosmos itself is a living play. It's ascent and return. And the imagination is the gate of its realization. So, fairy stories, he took fairy absolutely seriously. In 1939, Tolkien wrote that essay, and it just blew me away when I read it. Oh my gosh. It's in a book called The Tolkien Readers. Fantastic. He wasn't talking about tiny winged sprites. He was naming an ontological realm, a genuine mode of reality. And here it is. It's a realm, not a genre. So he writes, fairy cannot be caught in a net of words, for it is at once the perilous realm and also the state of enchantment of all who enter it. So by fairy story, he doesn't mean children's fantasy. That is not what he's talking about. He means a story that participates in the reality of this realm itself, this fairy realm. This is a world where the seen and unseen mingle together. This is where matter is transparent to spirit. To enter fairy is to enter a heightened mode of perception. And this is the same middle world of Shakespeare's lovers stumble into in his Midsummer Night's Dream. It's the realm of the conjunctio. That's why our link with A Midsummer Night's Dream is perfect. Oberon and Titania are the solar and lunar poles of creation. Their discord withers the earth. Their reunion restores fertility. The conjunctio oppositorum is the alchemical marriage of opposites. So Tolkien's fairy operates on this exact same law. When mortals enter it rightly, harmony between the material and the spiritual is renewed. In both writers, the fairy realm is not escapism. It is a symbolic geography of the soul and the cosmos. Its inhabitants personify elemental forces, moral laws, and archetypal truths. So Tolkien names 3 gifts of fairy. We have recovery. What this is seeing the world anew. It's cleansed of the drab blur of triteness, right? We also have escape. Now, escape is not a flight from reality, though, but it is a release from illusion, and it is the iron cage of materialism. That's what we're released from. And then we have consolation. The eucatastrophe, the sudden glimpse of joy and grace at the heart of creation. So all 3 of these are spiritual operations. They match the same triadic rhythm that we noticed in Shakespeare. Descend into the enchanted realm, you have disorientation, and then you return with a renewed vision in full light. So yes, Tolkien believed fairy is real. Not fairies, not like Tinkerbell, the little winged female trites. No, don't confuse this. It's real in the same way that Plato's forms or the Kabbalist's world of Yetzirah are real. It is a subtler stratum of being that interpenetrates our world. That is how Tolkien described it. He once told Clyde Kilby that The Lord of the Rings was a fundamentally religious and Catholic work, yet its religion is imaginatively incarnated in elves, light, song, and renewal. That's the same current that runs through Shakespeare's Wood and Carroll's Wonderland. Each of these is a doorway into the imaginal realm that Henry Corbin called the mundus imaginalis. The imagination is the Jacob's ladder between them, and fairy is its landscape, is how we want to see this. So he meant exactly that. Fairyland is actual. It's not a map location. It's not a map location. It is a mode of reality we enter through imagination purified of disbelief. That's Tolkien's definition. Well, Shakespeare dramatized it, Lewis Carroll satirized it, and Tolkien theologized it. All three lead us to the exact same revelation. The world is more real than realism allows. The invisible shines through the visible, and imagination is the organ that sees it. That's what we're facing here. So A Midsummer Night's Dream isn't escapist fantasy, is what I'm trying to tell you. It is a solstitial mystery that is disguised as a comedy. It's a ritual of balance and rebirth. So when the fairy king and queen reconcile, when dawn roars like a lion, the audience too is initiated. The heart, the intellect, the male and the female, the walking and the dreaming, the waking and the dreaming, the human and the divine, all of this is reunited in one work. It's not randomly set at midsummer either. That phrase points directly to the summer solstice. This is the turning of the cosmic wheel, once again, when day is longest and night begins its return. For Shakespeare, who was steeped in the Hermetic, the Neoplatonic, and folklore currents, that moment was charged with ancient mystery. So that is so fascinating how that has worked. And I'll skip all that. I've told you about the four quarters. I've told you about the ritual echoes of it and the initiatory pattern. What this is, the solstice always means initiation. What it is it's the death of the old sun and it's the birth of the new sun. That's what we're facing cosmologically. That sun dies as we go through the descent while we're reading the story or watching the drama on stage. And it's reborn when we reascend into the full light. This is the death of ignorance and the birth of illumination. This is the symbolic aspect of this, that the mystery is trying to give to each one of us individually. The descent into the wood at night. This is the entry into the hidden world, right? This is the alchemical dissolution. And that confuses everybody, of course. And then you have the enchantment, the dream. That is how we transform the alchemical mixing. And then the reunion in the dawn is the rebirth of the balanced soul as the sun turns again, so does our soul. You see, we're in the same cycle with the sun in the cosmos. That's the sense of this. That's why in Hermetic language, again, it's the nigredo to the albedo to the rubedo. It's a process. In symbolic geography, we go from north to east to south to west to center. And that gives us the completed cross. So it's a ritual replay of cosmic order and rebalance. We could read it like this: the dream of the world at the turning point of light, the Midsummer Night Dream. The dream of the world at the turning point of light. It's a vision enacted in the imagination, night, that renews the harmony of creation, day. Yeah. It's a play of cosmic solstice that's disguised as romantic farce, just as the Eleusinian rites were hidden under mythic narrative as well. Absolutely, exactly. Apuleius's book, The Golden Ass, is his description of his own transformation in the mysteries, but he had to disguise it or they would have killed him. So if you've ever read that, you get the feel for this thing, see? And then we know that Shakespeare's world was saturated with Hermetic, Neoplatonic, and mystery-derived thought. We have Marsilio Ficino's Plato and the Corpus Hermeticum, Giordano Bruno. We've got John Gee, the mathematician and astrologer of Elizabeth I. He had one of the largest libraries of Hermetic writings. His seer, Edward Kelly, was also there. They had the myth of Theseus and the Amazon queen Hippolyta, drawn from Plutarch and Ovid, also classic and biblical sources. The Bible's own imagery, Jacob's ladder, the Song of Songs, the four live creatures of Ezekiel. This was interpreted in Kabbalistic and emblem book traditions familiar to dramatists and poets. We have folk and festival lore. So there was a conceptual vocabulary here, the four elements, the harmony of the spheres, the marriage of sun and moon, imagination as mediator. All of this was in his day. And it was very well known out on the streets. Now, our advantage from our viewpoint with our modern mythographers, Jung and Campbell, Eliade, lesser influences from Freud, they gave us the analytical tools that Shakespeare didn't have. So when we read Midsummer as an initiatory descent into the unconscious, of course, we ourselves are translating Shakespeare's poetry into the language of depth psychology and comparative religion. That's true. I agree. That isn't falsifying him, I don't believe. It's extending the same symbolic grammar that he himself drew from. The play was built of archetypes so deep that each era can recognize its own reflection in them. Are we imposing meaning on this? Yeah, we are, but the kind of imposition that revelation itself performs. Great art is designed to invite projection as far as that goes. Kumaraswamy talks about this all the time. It serves as a mirror of the soul, right? So when a symbol continues to give us fresh gnosis, as it were, 4 centuries later, that's not evidence of accident, that's evidence of depth, I would propose. He knew his mythic sources, the calendar rites. He knew about the Hermetic talk of balance, and he used them to make his play resonate. He breathed the Renaissance worldview, and this is where microcosm and macrocosm correspond. He didn't have to theorize it. He was living in it. By poetic intuition, he touched the universal pattern of descent, renewal, and ascent that the ancient mysteries themselves ritualized. So, and medieval mystery plays themselves were religious dramas. And what they were doing was dramatizing salvation history. And that's what Shakespeare's generation inherited, but turned it inward. See, the sacred drama moved from church porch to stage. The cosmic Christ drama became the drama of the psyche, the soul's reconciliation of opposites, right? So it's not a mystery play by the church's definition, that's true, but it functions as one in the Hermetic sense. What we have here is an enactment of the mysterion. The hidden operation of transformation is what we're looking at in this. So I don't think we're inflating Shakespeare's significance. We are discovering how deeply his imagination was rooted in the perennial language of the mysteries. So, and he says himself in A Midsummer Night's Dream, the poet's eye in fine frenzy rolling doth glance from heaven to earth, from earth to heaven. See, even he says it all. The poet himself is Jacob's ladder, is what he's saying there, right? He glances from heaven to earth and then back again, from earth to heaven. So it doesn't matter if you got it through study, whether you got it through inspiration, is what I'm saying. Shakespeare was doing exactly what the mystery plays always aimed to do, to make the human imagination the meeting place of worlds. And I do believe he did very well in A Midsummer Night's Dream doing that. So, and then I've got my scholarly notes. Yeah, the 15th and 16th centuries was the rediscovery of Hermes Trismegistus, Plato, the Orphic hymns. All of this transformed European thought, man. We had a Hermetic Platonic synthesis in the Renaissance. That is what the renewal, the Renaissance, was caused from. All of this new fantastic literature coming from Arabia and being translated. So, like I said, Marsilio Ficino, Giovanni Pico della Mirandola, Giordano Bruno, Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa was alive in this time. His occult philosophy was a huge hit. John Dee, the Cambridge and Oxford humanists, Sir Philip Sidney, Edmund Spencer, George Chapman, all of those, the Fairy Queen, the Rosicrucians were in here. 1614 to 1616 is when their manifestos was printed, remember? So, yeah, and the belief that the solstice opened the fairy portals, that's recorded in Reginald Scott's Discovery of Witchcraft in 1584. So his setting does overlay Christian calendar with pagan cosmology, like the solar turning point and the psychic turning point, stuff like that. And the Egyptian, classical, and biblical channels were known in the Renaissance through Hermes Trismegistus and Plotinus, incidentally. Ficino explicitly identified the sun lion symbolism of Sekhmet and the two lions of the horizon, Ocker, with the Platonic world soul's power of renewal. So that was available. The classical sources, they had Ovid's Metamorphosis, they had Apuleius the Golden Ass, and Shakespeare knew these. They encode descent and ascent motifs and initiation patterned on the mysteries of Isis and Dionysus. So that was available. The biblical imagery, Genesis 28, Ezekiel's 4 creatures, they were interpreted by Philo, Origen, and later humanists such as Pico. So, yeah, I think he did have access to it, and I think it was in the intellectual atmosphere and currents of Shakespeare's time and place. Absolutely. Modern scholarship even supports this mystical kind of reading of A Midsummer Night's Dream. Francis Yates, E.M. Tilliard, The Elizabethan Worldview. I've read that one. That one's a good. Northrop Frye, A Natural Perspective, another good book. Marjorie Garber, Harold Bloom, Shakespeare, The Invention of a Human. I've read that. It's all here. So With this context, it is historically plausible that Shakespeare, directly or indirectly, was conversant with the Hermetic and the Neoplatonic ideas. I don't think there's no question in my mind, I'll put it that way. He didn't need secret initiations. The air he breathed was already filled with the Hermetic cosmology, emblematic thinking, and mythic correspondences. Reading this as a hidden mystery play, I believe, is fully justified. I don't think it's a projection at all from our understanding of the ancient mysteries back onto Shakespeare. I don't think that's there. I don't think so at all. So when the ancients spoke of the mysteries, they weren't whispering about secret societies. They were speaking about life itself. The great rhythm of descent and return, darkness and dawn, forgetting and remembering who we are. And that's what Shakespeare in The Midsummer Night Dream, in Tolkien's Fairy, in Alice's Wonderland. That same rhythm is what we have here. The lovers lose their way, the night grows thick with magic. And then just at the edge of dawn, we hear the lion roar, and the light comes back. Yeah. That story is our story, because each of us walks in the forest of confusion, don't we? Yeah. The rabbit hole of uncertainty, the shadowed underworld of change. But if we do dare to stay awake within the dream, something wondrous happens. We begin to see that imagination itself is the bridge between earth and heaven, body and spirit, human and the divine. The old initiates called this Jacob's ladder. We too have access to that ladder that we read about in Genesis. That's what we don't know. That's why reading and understanding the patterns of the ancient mysteries is so exciting, and then discovering them in our own great literature over and over, everywhere, over there in that book, over there in this group, over there in that, in the ancient materials, it gets pretty exciting because it fills us with meaning. It gives every breath a larger part of the pattern. 4 we find in scripture and myth. The lion, the bull, the man, the eagle, they are still inside of us. That's our passion, our stability, our clarity, our compassion and passion. To balance them within us is to restore our stability, our clarity, our compassion. That's the seasons of our own soul that we're talking about. That's what the mysteries were always about. Harmony, not escape. Transformation, not secrecy. These aren't secret. We can all read this stuff. It's fantastic. When we study these symbols or we paint them, if we listen to them in a play, we're not just learning history. We are performing the rite again. We are remembering that the world is sacred. That's our duty. This is re-mythologizing history because we have forgotten the world is sacred. And that also implies, since we came from the dust, that we too are sacred. The ancient mysteries were about becoming more fully human. And this is the relevance of reading the great world literatures. It's the relevance of reading the really ancient materials to see how they connected with the divine within themselves, because that hasn't changed through the eons of time. Every true mystery tradition, it doesn't matter, Egyptian, Greek, Enochic, Hermetic, Hopi, these aimed not at escape from the world, but transformation within it. The initiate descended into darkness to awaken the light within us. The rituals dramatized what our psyche must undergo to become whole again, to become united, so that the many can become one. So when we recognize the pattern, descent, confusion, illumination, rebirth, and we can see this in Shakespeare and Tolkien and Carroll and others, we're not studying history. We're seeing our own psychological and spiritual progress mapped in story form. There's value for us. These myths give us language and give us imagery for our own inner evolution. They remind us that our struggles are part of a cosmic rhythm, not failures, but initiations. When we say we want to build our spirituality, what we're really talking about is awakening perception. We're learning to see the divine shining through the ordinary. The ancients called this faculty imaginatio vera, the true imagination. It's not fantasy. It's actually a form of vision, the eye of the heart. When you paint, if you write, keep writing. If you meditate, dream, whatever, you're using the same organ the initiates used in the temple rites. When you respond to a story, a poem, a myth, when you feel something stir in your chest, that is the mystery working on you exactly as it was meant to do. Cultivating imagination is a practical spiritual discipline. It refines attention. It deepens our sympathy. It opens awareness to subtle dimensions of experience. And every one of these are prerequisites to compassion, creativity, and light, and insight. The fours that we discussed, the directions, the four elements, the four creatures, the four solstices, those aren't relics from the past. They're maps of human wholeness. For instance, fire is the lion. In our human dimension, it's our passion, our will. It gives us purpose, courage, vitality, right? The earth being the bull, this is our body and stability. It's about health and our being grounded, groundedness. The air being symbolized by the man or the angel is about our thought or word. Clarity, communication is this expression for us. The water is eagle. It gives us our feeling, our intuition. That turns to compassion and imagination. It all is interwoven from the ancients all the way up to today in us ourselves. Spiritual growth today is still about harmonizing these four powers. Now, when one dominates, say intellect without empathy, passion without wisdom, etc., our seasons go out of joint. We're out of balance, right? Just like in Midsummer Night's Dream. So learning to balance these four elements in our own hearts and our own psyche, well, this is a living continuation of those ancient mysteries. It's self-knowledge in action. Look at it that way. Every mythic descent, doesn't matter whether you read it in Enoch or Alice going down the rabbit hole, or the lover's night in the forest in Midnight Summer Dreams, or in Mirrors, what we face in times of upheaval or depression or doubt or loss. The message across the millennia is simple and healing. The darkness is the beginning of illumination. When everything seems disordered, you're in the forest phase of the mystery. The very moment that transformation becomes possible. So what this happens is myths give us the courage. Yeah. It gives us the meaning to our suffering because we're all going to suffer, right? They let us reframe chaos into initiation instead of punishment. And that's the value. In modern terms, art and story are the new temples. When you read or you listen or you watch, or even if you create a mythic narrative yourself, a film, a video, whatever, you enter the ritual chamber. The characters you meet are aspects of your own being. Their journey rehearses your own awakening. It's like Tolkien wrote, the fairy story is not mere consolation, it is recovery, a seeing of things as we are meant to see them. And Shakespeare says through his character Puck, think but this, and all is mended. Both mean imagination heals perception. So engaging the great literature as mythic scripture trains our souls to see unity behind multiplicity. We are trained to see order behind confusion and love beneath fear. Here's a way to frame it beautifully and accessibly so that you can remember this, so that you can put it into your own heart. The ancient mysteries weren't about secret societies. They were about remembering who we are. Every age retells them in new language. Shakespeare used comedies and fairies. Tolkien used elves. Lewis Carroll used paradox and mathematics. We use story, art, film, YouTube videos, imagination. When we understand these patterns, we start to live more consciously. What this does is it balances our elements, facing our darkness, awakening our own inner light. The mysteries aren't gone. They're awaiting us in every act of creation and every moment of awareness that we have. I'm going to encourage you to do something. Notice myth in daily life. I've been trying to work on this, and it works. Where's my forest today? My Puck, my Oberon and Titania? Ask yourself, treat imagination as something sacred. Just try it. What am I creating with my thoughts and words? Honor cycles. Where am I in my own solstice? Where am I? Am I rising? Am I descending? Am I turning? Hello? Those reflections make the mysteries practical spirituality for you. And this isn't like dogma, but it's a way of living more consciously and lovingly. And I think that's what the world needs. The ancient mysteries are not, again, about escaping the world. They're just not. They're about seeing the world as sacred. To live mythically is to live awake. To find in every descent and return the ongoing marriage of heaven and earth within our own hearts. To unite with nature and the cosmos, of which we've always been a part of anyway. But to do it mentally, with our heart, with our psyche, with our love. That's how to put these myths to work. Thanks for watching the Backyard Professor Esoteric Studies. I'll be back with more just as soon as I can. Appreciate you.